Cisco ACI is capable to integrate with multiple VMM domains. Between them, it can integrate with the VMware, it can integrate with Microsoft Hyper-V or Openstack, as well as others. Today we're going to see together an Openstack integration through the ACI Unified Plugin. The Unified Plugin indeed enables two modes of integration through ML2 and group-based policy. In this session, we're going to see the ML2 plugin mode. In another session in the future, I will see also, and I will show you the group-based policy mode. So let's have a look at the setup. I've got an OpenStack installation based on Red Hat with the existing projects which have been deployed by default during the installation. So it's a clean install. From an ACI perspective, I see that there is already an OpenStack VMM integration, so I'm able to see the nodes that have been deployed with the OpenStack, and I see it's actually fully qualified domain name. And I see that in this node at the moment there is no instance yet created. If I move to the tenants, I also see a number of tenants. None of them have been created or related to the OpenStack installation. So let's now try to create a new project and let's see what that triggers on the ACI side. I'm then going to create a project and I'm going to define it as new project 01. I will add as a member the admin user and will give it admin privileges. When I create the project in the OpenStack, actually there is no call towards the ACI fabric, so we can see that no ACI tenant has been created. Why? Because the plugin for the integration lives on the neutron component of OpenStack, and that's not been yet called in this project creation. So let me move to the new project 01, and I will go ahead and start defining neutron network. So from the Horizon GUI, I will go and define the first network, which I'm going to call net1 network. I will also associate a subnet, subnet1, and will give it a /24 network. So once I create this network in ACI, I will see in a moment that a new ACI tenant is created. So the new ACI tenant is provisioned with the OpenStack project name, new project 01. Actually, there will be also the UUID that has been defined in the OpenStack side. If I expand the elements, I can see that already there is a new bridge domain. The bridge domain does not have yet a subnet because indeed the neutron network has not been attached to a router. And eventually I've got also an EPG. So EPG and bridge domain, they have the name of the neutron network that has been defined in OpenStack. So now I'm going to create also a second network. I'm going to call it net2, and I will indeed attach to it a subnet which has a /24 range. Again, so this should create a second bridge domain, net2, again without a subnet yet, and the second EPG, the endpoint group in ACI. So now the creation of a router in OpenStack will add L3 capabilities or routing capabilities to the networks that have been created. So I create a router, I will call it router, and eventually once that is created, I will go ahead and attach two interfaces. So one interface will be attached to my net1, and the second interface will be attached to the net2. So let me add the second one, and I will attach to the subnet net2. So once that is done, if I go back to ACI, I can see that the bridge domain has now a new subnet attached to it. So the corresponding net1 will have a 192.168.66.1, which is the default gateway IP address, and the 67.1 is for the net2. You also notice that a VRF is being created and eventually the bridge domain are bound to that VRF because now they are routable. So once that is done in Openstack, and I can now go ahead and create instances. So I can define a VM1 net1 instance, and I can bind this with an image, a zeros image, tiny flavor, and the net1 neutral network. At the same time, I can also create other two VMs. So I will create a second VM in the same network. Again, I will specify the image being zeros, the flavor being tiny, and the network being again net1 launch instance. And finally, the third instance. So I will call it VM1 net2 this time. And indeed, as per the name, I will bind this to the network net2. So while this is creating the different VMs, I can already go ahead in my net1 EPG in ACI, and from the operational tab I can see already that there are 3 instances attached to it. One is the .2, which is my DHCP provided OpenStack instance, which will be the one assigning the IP addresses to the other instances in the subnet. And then I can see the .6 is the first instance which I created, and the other one which is still being spawned, so doesn't have yet an IP address. It will be assigned as soon as the VM is up. Eventually, if I move to net2, I can see still a .2 IP address, that is my DHCP instance, and then the .6, which is my VM1 net2 instance, which I created in OpenStack. So, in fact, as I can see, the 67.6, 66.10, 66.6 are the ones that are corresponding indeed to my VM instances which I discovered in the ACI. I can also see in the VM networking tab, which is the overview of the OpenStack VMM integration, that now the controller VM that I have seen already before has a number of instances attached to it. Indeed, I can see the DHCP one with their TAP interfaces, the IP, MAC, VXLAN encapsulation, and the port group where they have been bound to, and then eventually my 3 VMs, VM1 net1, VM1 net2, and VM2 net1. So I have got full visibility there. If I want to go ahead and check actually the data plane, so I can console one of the VM. So I will go ahead and console into VM1 net1. I will actually open that in a separate tab. So I can log in with the zeros login credential. I can check indeed that the IP has been defined correctly, 66.6. And from the VM, I will be able to ping already the default gateway, the .1, and eventually if I check the IP addresses of the other, I can see that .10 is in the same network and .6 is in the net2 network. So let's go ahead and try to ping the .10, which I'm able to do, and eventually the 67.6, which is in the other network. So I can ping all of them. I can also SSH the other VM, for example, in the other network. So 67.6, my mistake. I just accept the certificate and I'm able to log in the other VM. So I'm inside. So with this integration, in fact, you have not only full alignment between what's been created in OpenStack and in the API controller, but you have also full visibility about all the virtual machine and what exactly is being created and where is attached to the ACI fabric. I can also see a scheme here which will highlight eventually my neutral network. In this case, I can see my net1 and net2 which are bound by a router, so the in fact contract that has been defined in ACI allowing any traffic between those two networks. This has been defined through the ML2 model, indeed through the group-based policy that we'll see in another session. We'll see that this contract that is defined through the group-based policy mechanism will be eventually specifying what is the specific protocol and ports that are allowed between two different networks. So in this case, instead, with the ML2 model, the security groups are defined and visible in the Openstack panel. Thanks for watching.